As John said, I'm really particularly excited to introduce our special guests, Francie Bishop Good and Mindy Solomon from Mindy Solomon Gallery. So Francie was raised in Allentown, Pennsylvania. She currently lives and works in South Florida and in New York City. Francie creates sculptural gardens, subterranean, magical, tropical, extraterrestrial forms. She occasionally pairs these sculptures with paintings, reflecting similar abstracted colors. Energetically, she swirls color to both complement and clash with the three-dimensional components. Her seemingly endless array of works blossom and grow from a long history of training and extensive creative work. Mindy Solomon opened her gallery in Miami in 2009. She is active in the Miami art community and serves on the steering committee of the Women's International Committee at the Perez Art Museum. She has dedicated her life to the visual arts as a practicing artist, educator, advocate, and a collector. I'm going to hand it over to Francie and Mindy so that they can give us an intro into the recent exhibition of Francie's at Mindy Solomon Gallery called Curious Garden. And then, as usual, we'll follow up with questions and open it up to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you so much for inviting us. It's really an honor. What you're seeing now is sculptures on pedestals that I made with Luke
Jenkins.
And I was inspired by, you talk, I'm getting nervous.
All right. So what she said, but anyway, the images that you're seeing are these kind of organic collaborations that Francie did with an artist in Fort Lauderdale named Luke Jenkins, who was kind of responding to these irregular forms using a kind of mixed media approach that also kind of echoed this plant-like organic space. So when we did the installation, we tried to set up the pedestals so that you felt like you were walking through a garden space. And you know, the gallery is very large, and very, you know, it has the white walls, and the bright color just really popped off of it and made this wonderful interaction between the sculptural forms and the paintings. And as you can see with the painting that's in the background, Francie's sculptures actually really echo the lines and the movements in the canvas. So there's a real exchange of compositional ideas taking place between the works.
So I'll talk about these.
Okay,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I got nervous. These are my giant pinch pots. So a lot of my sculptural work starts with real small pinch pots that I then put together and build up these sculptures. And Mindy challenged me to make enormous sculptures that could go outside. And I had these made from my little tiny pinch pots. And I had them in the studio. I worked on them for a year until I liked them. And they have a funny sense of humor that I like, and they are my own now. They took a while, but I really like them.
And I wanted to also, you know, Francie mentioned that I challenged her to increase the scale. And I think that, you know, when I look at the relationships that I have with the artists that I represent, I also feel that it's very important to be a guiding source and to encourage experimentation. And I've told Francie more than once in this process how impressed and proud I am of the fact that she really did push the envelope on ideas. I mean, people were challenged and astounded and delighted, and the sense of discovery with the work. There was an unpredictability in the work, which makes for a very exciting exhibition.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question real quick? So, so the reference to the title of your exhibition, Curious Garden, do you find inspiration in nature, or are your landscapes, do you create those like from memory and imagination?
Well, it actually started almost as a joke. It was like, oh, another pot in my garden, and it looked like a garden. And I'm sure I am inspired by what's outside because it's very beautiful, but it's not directly.
Yeah.
It comes in sideways. So this is a corner unit that we had, and I have the sculptures without any paintings behind them. And there's a variety. Mindy has a nice sense of making things minimal because I'm sort of maximal. And it really was a beautiful installation. Thank you. These are my pairings, and these are something I came up with a long time ago, actually. Well, 2 years, that's a long time. And it started because I think unconsciously, my mom was an interior decorator, and she would always take paintings and weird things and just plop them in the strangest spots. So, and she always had something in front of it. So I think unconsciously, that's where it came from. But I love the challenge of mixing two-dimensional with three-dimensional. And I'm untrained in clay. I don't have any training. So I work on it the same way as I work on my paintings. It's synthetic polymer paints. So it's very organic, the way I work. There's no rules. I just try to push myself.
That particular painting is that we just saw. The large work is comprised of 6 small panels put together. And was that the order that you had intended?
Well, there was no intention. And then at the end, it became an intention. You know, it wasn't, I work on them all over the place, you know, on the floor, and they don't necessarily go together until the end.
So with your pairing process, do you make the sculptures to be intentionally with those paintings, or does that happen after as well?
It happens after, because if I do it intentionally, it would be awful. It would be like matching your couch. So this way, I challenge myself. And there's a real primitive aesthetic to my sculptures. I'm not sure if the paintings are as primitive. They might be, but not that one. And then the shelf is also part of the sculpture.
Oh. Amanda, can you back it up one? Because I want to ask Francie a question. So the work on the right, I know that when we sent out the invitation, the picture we had of it originally, it was the painting was horizontal, but in the installation, it's vertical. Do you see these pairings as being fluid? And I guess they can change depending on where they're at?
No, actually, I intended it the other way. Well, it's okay. I mean, I'm flexible. Because when I paint, you know, I keep turning them.
Yeah.
I like it that way. Sometimes I cross things out on the back of the board and change the arrow. So it is a little fluid.
But she actually, though, when she decides the pairing that she wants,
yeah.
her client says, "Can I switch?" She says no.
Yeah, yeah. They sort of get married.
Yeah, they get married.
Yeah.
She doesn't want them to get separated.
And then when they get married, I write on the back, I make a drawing, one of my doodles of the sculpture, so that when I move it, because I work a lot, I'll remember what it goes with. Should take a photograph.
I love it.
And now we're moving into some of the collection pieces that I chose. This is Lisa Ann Arabak, as you see, and I was attracted to the unevenness of the yarn and the black and white and the graphic quality. So I just chose a few pieces from the collection to see where some of my ideas come from. I don't know if they do or not. This is my husband, David. You're in the picture. He's a collector.
Hi, David.
Cheers.
Hi, David.
Madeline De Niro, and when we built this house, I knew these pieces belonged here, and I think they really relate to my current work, that beautiful organic shapes, and these are just spectacular pieces. So I'm happy to have them in the collection. And people ask if their lights, if they turn on. No. And this is Jason Giordano. This is one of my favorite pieces. And David said he picked it. Oh, okay. Anyway, he takes paint and lets it dry on probably metal or glass, and then he scrapes it off and glues it on his canvas. So I love this piece, attracted to not only the design, but the texture. It's one of my favorite pieces in the collection.
And it's by a male artist.
And it's by a male artist, but we'll get to that. And this is Jacqueline Humphreys. If you don't know her work, you should. Her last exhibition, the paintings were mammoth and just spectacular. I love her use of color, and also the sort of the raw canvas on the bottom, and the yellow's my favorite color. So it's just a beautiful piece. You want to say anything about it? No.
No, I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and this is a Miami artist, Beatrice Montevaro, and we got this, 2003, and I love the black and white, the graphic quality, and the weird guy, and the great, I love design, the red and the pink and the blue, and those vivid colors, how they pop.
Can you tell us a little bit about how being a collector of other artists, how does that inspire you in your work?
Well, I think actually if I'm working on photography, I'm probably collecting photographs. So that I did that for a long time. If I'm working on large abstract paintings, that's what I'm attracted to. I'm very attracted to ceramics and sculpture now. That's the way it works. I think maybe my ideas come first. And this is Shanique Smith. This is a beautiful piece. And I noticed, I never realized it before, but I noticed there's a can there's a flattened out soda can or beer can in the middle of this flower. So I love her experimentation and her vivid quality. A beautiful piece. It's very large. This is Joe Snyder. We've had this a long time. I love her colors. I love pink and orange, and her abstract, all over abstract form. But what's really interesting and what grows on me are those squares. And I think without those squares, it wouldn't be a very good painting. You know, it just balances it all out. It's a great piece. And this is a recent acquisition. This is the artist Katie Stout, and this is a lamp that you touch her boob and the lamp goes on. And I like the sense of humor, and I love this piece. It's fun, but it's really good. And the name of it is Nora. It's named after one of her assistants.
Oh. So I know that you collect a lot of female artists, and you have the Girls Club. Can you talk a little bit about what led you to concentrate on female artists and creating the Girls Club?
Well, we didn't start out collecting female artists, and we're just collecting. Mm-hmm. And one day I looked around and I said, you know, this collection is mostly female artists. We really should focus on it because it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Plus, it's hard when you're collecting to get so many different things. So we mostly collect female, not all, but that's how it started. And it wasn't planned. I'm not a planner. And then we ran out of space for the collection, And I started with Michelle Weinberg and Sarah Rupert, who's here, the Girls Club collection. And we and we still have different exhibits, few a year, and programming. And we have over 1,000 pieces in the collection.
That's fantastic.
Thanks.
Let me see. So I wanted to ask you, Amanda, can you go back to maybe an installation shot of Francie's exhibition? And then I just wanted to ask you, so this is a perfect example. So you talk about how you like to work in a series, a body of work that's a series, and also you like to work intuitively. Can you talk to us about why those two aspects are important to your process?
I mean, that's really the only way I know.
Yeah.
That's my comfort zone. I started working in a series when I used to teach art, and I knew I couldn't get anything completed, so I would just do little tiles. And then at the end of it, I put it together. That's really how it started.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think it allows more experimentation by doing multiples. It's also pretty ADD, so it helps with that. And I can work on a sculpture, I can work on a painting, I can go and work on some of the clay. So it suits me. I don't get bored.
It's your personality. So you're also trained as a photographer. Can you talk about, so you mentioned that you're untrained in clay and sculpture and making these types of sculptures. Can you talk about how photography informs your painting and sculptures, if it does?
Yeah. Well, the photography really became part of my painting when I did this big coma series for many, many years. And that's a whole nother project. And then the digital, maybe I should explain it. So the coma series was photographs from my high school and my mom's high school the years we graduated. And I scanned all of our, I'm looking at them now, all of our classmates, and then I scanned past work and put it all together with paintings. So I guess I was never really a pure painter. So that project went into my clay, which was very, very bright. The colors came from the digital colors. So does that make any sense?
That does make sense.
No sense. I'm not sure how it informs it. That's probably the best answer.
I guess that goes into your intuitive process. It's all subconscious the way you work.
Right. But I love photography.
Do you want me to open it up to other people to ask questions as well?
Sure.
You can go ahead and open it up. So Lila Garcia said, question, you are a pioneer in supporting women artists. Are you still focused on them as you purchase art for your collection? Oh, and she said, you just answered my question because I had a similar question.
Okay.
And Jolie said it was an honor to exhibit Comus.
Oh, nice.
Jolie Johnson.
Oh, nice.
So Jolie's not on cam. I'm just now noticing that she's here, but she's a colleague of mine at the Hilliard Museum.
Right, right. That's where my Comus show started. They did a really nice exhibition, and then it traveled to 5 other venues, museums.
That Dina asks, can you also talk about your glazing process?
There is no. So my process is I bisque fire it. I have a kiln, and that's it. And then I do not glaze because originally I didn't like it and I couldn't wait. And so I love the way I can play with the paint. I can use it as watercolors. I can make it really thick. And I don't glaze normally. And neither did Kenneth Price. No, it's acrylic paint. Yeah.
I didn't know that about Ken Price.
Yeah, there's a zillion layers.
Yeah,
I did study on my own,
yeah.
you know, before I really dove in, but I didn't have any classes. I didn't want to get messed up. David, he's going to come and talk to us.
Yeah, she says she doesn't study, but when travel was possible, we used to travel, and she would cart me around to every museum, every 20 galleries a day, 4 museums a day.
That's exactly.
You know, it would challenge me a whole lot more. It would challenge her, but she'd study. She never read wall texts. She just goes straight for the visual. I go straight for the wall text. So don't think she's untrained. She's absorbing all this work, and sometimes she remembers the names of the artists that she's learning from, but sometimes she doesn't. Bye.
Thank you.
Francie, I have a question.
Okay.
Scott, hey. So I saw a great movie the other night on Giacometti, and looking at clay works and other artists, even like Twombly's works.
Oh, I love those.
Right? So what other artists, because that's the one thing that sort of appealed even to us about your work when we saw it for the first time, were those clay works pairing with the paintings, which I've never really can reference anybody making that connection.
Right.
So are there other artists, you mentioned Ken Price a second ago, are there other artists that have really influenced you in that direction?
When I started working with clay, I loved, who was that guy that did those huge, he had a show at the Museum of Design.
Volkus?
Yeah, I loved him originally. Now, not so much anymore, but originally, I loved his work, and he also paints, but they weren't paired together. The Twombly works are some of my favorites. Let's see, who else do we have? I can't think of anybody. Francesca Di Matteo. Yeah. Am I saying?
What about Franz Klein?
Well, I love Franz Klein,
Not
but
Franz
he didn't make
Klein,
clay.
Franz West.
Oh, I love Franz
Sorry,
West.
Franz
Yeah.
West, the sculptures.
Yeah, Franz West, I adore. Thank you. So I love so many, but when I work, especially now that I'm working in clay and painting, I feel that I've really sort of found my own vision, and that I'm not referencing other people so much. I'm just doing it. Mm-hmm. It feels really good.
When I look at even an artist like Eddie Martinez, right, who really references his sculptural works to his paintings and his drawings, but he doesn't pair them together. So that is really unique to you. I mean, is that what made you just all of a sudden say, I'm going to take this sculpture? Because it doesn't really, when it's in front of the painting, it almost feels like a painting, no longer a sculpture. But what made you connect those two?
See, I did it for a show I had at David Castillo Gallery around 3 years ago. I was just starting. I started this almost 4 years ago, almost as art therapy. And I just thought, and they were quite small then, I thought, wow, these would look really great in front of my paintings. So the paintings were big, and they still had some figures in it from my photography. And then there'd be this little sculpture. And gradually, the sculpture developed into much bigger and more pronounced. But it did start like that. I sort of tiptoed into it.
Nice.
So we have, Lila said, is this pandemic influencing you present/future work in any way?
I think it's allowing me to really work more. So yes, I have a lot of time, and it's great. And I think it's just been good for artists. Most artists, it's good for. Occasionally, we all freak out, but I think it's been good.
Well, I know that when we first started the conversation of doing an event together, at the time it was just a virtual exhibition, and y'all were able to get it into the gallery and fully realize it. So that's pretty amazing in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, I got really lucky. Mindy was wonderful, and my work actually got live for quite a while. That was cool glasses.
Yeah.
So Bonnie just asked, she says, "Hi, Fran. Do you find working in clay therapeutic?"
Yes. Thank you, Bonnie. Yes, it is very therapeutic. I mean, it really is. And I don't get it to the point where I'm doing those glazes again and again. And then sometimes they break, and that's good too. And then I put them back together. So after I do my sculptures, I then put them together in assemblages. So there are no rules.
I love it.
And then sometimes, like today, I just pulled a bunch apart. I thought, God, these are awful. And then one fell, and that was okay. It was meant to fall. So they're not precious objects.
So Samantha said that she loves the pinch pots, and she put pinch makes you think of small, and they're also are so large and vibrant.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did want to comment, I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned Vulcas. And so, prior to AEIVA's existence, the university had a permanent collection that started in the 70s, and that was the first thing in our collection. And the whole collection was sort of started to kind of because he was here in the late 70s and did a workshop with the museum and in conjunction with the university. And it's a gorgeous piece, and we bring it out every now and then, and it's maybe 3 or 4 feet tall.
Yeah, his work really was spectacular.
But what's interesting about Vulcas and the work, there was a kind of machismo to the physicality of the work, and his persona is very macho. And, there's, even though these are kind of rough-hewn and visceral, there's also a kind of delicacy and femininity. And I don't know if it's, from the palette or just kind of, maybe the thinness of some of the extrusions that come off. But while there are similarities in the kind of primitive nature of the making, there's definitely this distinction, which, another thing that I want to mention too is that Francie right now, at the same time that Francie was having a show, there was another a woman artist in Miami of relatively the same generation making work, and I think in both cases the excitement, the inventiveness, the palettes were so dynamic. I mean, it's wonderful to see people to continue to evolve and mature and experiment well into their adulthood.
Thank you.
well.
No, I think that's an interesting distinction to make, because I will just add about the Vulcas, in the exhibition, the object file, there is this photograph of him making the piece on campus, and it is so cheesy, he's all muscly and it's this real, it's this old school idea of the male artist, sculptor guy that you don't see as much anymore. And I think when you compare him in that way, your works become very subversive of that idea.
It was my initial love, and seeing his exhibit at the Museum of Design in New York was very powerful.
See, but she's not telling you that she works in a wife beater with a cigarette hanging. So you don't know that.
So we didn't get the full studio Francie tonight.
But what else is interesting about the medium? I mean, the medium of clay paired with the paintings, but the medium of clay and where clay has kind of evolved in the contemporary art world. Yep. And how I feel like many collectors, especially sort of old school contemporary art collectors that were very adamant to say that they didn't have an interest in craft, now they're all sort of I want objects. you're seeing so much more interest in objects, and I don't know if it's because one person decided that, you know, it was cool and now the whole art world embraces it, or they just find a relationship between the handmade.
Mhm.
And maybe there's somehow a story that they have in their own life, like, you know, playing with Play-Doh when you were a kid, or a special experience in summer camp. But there's the kind of relationship that people have with objects that is exciting to watch. And, you know, Francie's just kind of moved right into that with her work.
I have another one. Sorry.
And-
So, Francie, in terms of your collecting, who are some of the younger artists that you guys are looking to add to the collection?
Oh, I don't have an agenda. I'm trying to stop collecting. But on the other hand, we had a program this summer where we invited artists to submit work, and we bought one a week during the pandemic. So we did that. But honestly, I don't have any plans to buy it. I mean, I'm just not a planner. David, however, David, however, has a big plan, and he collects civil rights photographs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he has a plan, and, you know, he writes. He has he'll do a book, and yeah.
So, what are some of the civil rights photographs that y'all have in the collection? Some of the artists.
It started as I started thinking about growing up here in Florida, and then I grew up in the 1950s and 60s here. And South Florida may not be the Deep South, but it still has some remnants of the Deep South. And I always remember the colored and the white water fountains on the Florida Turnpike when I was little. And I always thought that was strange and not right, but never did much about it. In 2014, the NSU Art Museum had an exhibition of the civil rights photographs of Bob Edelman. And they were...
Bonnie's on the call, too.
Oh, Bonnie's on the call. Hi, Bonnie. Anyway, they woke me up. They were so powerful. They were... they made me realize that my privileged life was very, very different than those brave souls that risked everything for equality, for the right to vote, for the right to ride on the front of buses, the right to have education for their kids. Bob Edelman told me it was like photographing a war, but only one side was fighting, the other side was resisting. And that stuck with me. And I started collecting works by Gordon Parks, works by Leonard Freed, by so many wonderful photographers. That who is this? That's way. Anyway, I've got a pretty substantial collection, and we're starting to put together with the museum at Kenyon College an exhibition pairing these works with contemporary works to try to tell a story.
That would be a good traveling show.
But this started long before the current.
David, I would love to talk about that sometime. I actually was friends with Bob Adelman, like in the last 10 years of his life. I did a book and an exhibition of his photographs from the 1963 Children's March, the Children's Crusade in Birmingham, which was one of the earliest, one of the first instances of when the Birmingham police turned the fire hoses on.
Not tonight. I'd love.
We should talk about it, and I would love to to sort of compare notes and show you what we have in our collection and send you a copy of that Bob Adelman book.
Okay, great. I'll put you together.
That's
Yeah. Jim Sokol has been so patient with his question.
I
Do
know.
you want to ask it, Jim, or do you want me to read it from the comments?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with a question that Tina asked. This is going back 7.5 minutes ago now. She asked about the pandemic, the influence of the pandemic, and I wanted to ask about the influence of Black Folks Matter and the Trump administration. How is that, if at all, influencing your work?
Me?
Yeah.
That's when I started clay. I started clay during the start of the Trump administration. So it started as art therapy.
Explain why.
Well, I'm not going to get into that, but that's when I started. So it definitely got me going into a totally different direction. The Black Lives Matters, I'm not sure. I mean, everything affects you as an artist, but
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how that affected me. I know the Trump administration did and does on a daily basis.
And sometimes those sort of external cultural like influences it's hard to sometimes pinpoint those until years later. Like
Right. Right.
Like, oh, that's how that manifested in my work. I see that a lot.
Does anybody else have any questions that they want to ask?
I had one more question.
All right, Jim.
I wanted to know the artist, the name of the artist again who made Nora.
Oh, Katie Stout.
Katie Stale, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
Yeah.
Thanks for allowing me to.
Well, yes, thank you for joining us. Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to thank Francie and Mindy for being here tonight. And I want to thank all of our guests, far local and far away, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I hope it wasn't too painful.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Tina and